So, how do you overcome performance anxiety? Almost all musicians experience performance anxiety at some point during their musical career. Some people allow it to stop them from playing music, and other people find ways to manage it. Now, if you're somebody who is struggling to manage performance anxiety, perhaps it's putting you off from playing, perhaps you're one of those people that can only play the violin or whatever musical instrument you might be playing in your bedroom alone with the door shut. And if anybody's looking at you, then all of a sudden you can't play anywhere near as well as you could play before. So I'm going to try and address why that happens today and what you can do to overcome that. So performance anxiety is something that I have experienced almost to a level that I completely quit music. When I was in school, I started very young, as with all violinists. I was playing in orchestras, and then I got to the stage where I started to get offered solo parts, and I was sort of getting into my grade 8, and for some reason I just stopped being able to play in front of people, and at the time I couldn't figure it out. I would shake uncontrollably, and my violin teacher would say, "Well, I don't understand what's going on. In the lessons, you're fine. You're comfortable with me, but as soon as you do a performance, it all goes wrong." I was given solo parts with my orchestra, the orchestras that were going around in school, and we had performances. And the first time I did a solo performance with an orchestra, we were playing a Grieg piece. Aus Holbergzeit is the German name, or Holberg Suite is the English name. I don't know if anybody knows that piece, and there's a part where the violin goes up nice and high, and I love playing the piece. I played it so many times in my bedroom and completely dropped it in the performance, and it was one of those moments where you just want the whole world to swallow you up, and that was probably the factor that caused me to actually stop playing the violin, because I started to believe my own thoughts that I wasn't good enough. So where do those thoughts come from, and how can you control them? Now, very often when we are children, perhaps we had a teacher or a parent or somebody else who's involved in our life that perhaps told us that we weren't good enough, and that can often stay with you. And it might not even be something that somebody said. Maybe it's just because you can't help but compare yourself to other people. It's not always that obvious, but it's important to monitor the inner critic and understand, well, what am I actually telling myself? And am I being very kind to myself? Now, another way that you can manage performance anxiety during the performance is through breath. Now, if you've watched my other videos already, you'll understand that I'm a huge advocate of breath work in order to improve your skills as a musician. Now, quite often when people get anxiety at any point, as well as when they're playing the violin, it's because they've stopped breathing. And when you stop breathing, you feel that time is literally running out, and you feel all of this pressure on your shoulders that the world's about to end, because it's a subconscious feeling that you've got to do this thing quickly, and then we can speed up, we lose our pace, and suddenly everything falls apart. Now, if you consciously breathe and learn to train yourself to breathe whilst you're playing in a way that is in flow, and by in flow I mean not because that's what I call anxiety breathing. Proper yogic breathing is from the stomach, and we use the diaphragm in order to fill the lungs, and you can control that breath if you tighten the back of your throat as though you're steaming up a window in cold weather, like that. You do constrict the back of the throat there. Now, if you do that, you can actually control the speed of your breathing. And allow the stomach to fill with air. So if you can maintain this kind of breathing whilst you're playing, and ensure that the breathing is happening whether you're conscious of it or not, you should be able to keep the performance anxiety at bay. So if I'm on stage, and I do perform as a soloist now for a living, I've played over 300 times with my wedding band, the Shanty Duo, and we have performed at weddings all over the UK. I've performed with other acts as well before that, so probably in total now 700 or 800 times, God knows, I've lost count. But the important part is, over time now, I do not get stage fright. I can walk on a stage, I can have 1,000 people looking at me, and it's as though I'm doing a washing up, and that is where you need to be. If you can be in a kind of space where you don't really feel there's any difference between you playing the violin in front of 1,000 people and you doing the washing up whilst you're at home, then you've found that space that you need to be in order to perform at your optimal ability. And it's kind of like being able to let go of thought. Now, when I notice that my thoughts are creeping in, how do I stop them? Okay, so it's one of those things, I don't know if you've ever tried to meditate before or practiced any kind of spiritual practice similar to meditation, but you'll know that quite often they say the thought is the problem, so we have to stop the thinking. It's the same for music. If you think about it, when we're playing music, we can practice and use our mind in order to help us to train ourselves to play, but at some point we have to let go of the mind, and you just hit the play button and then let go. And it's as though you're not even there. And that is where you need to be in order to sort of overcome this idea of performance anxiety and letting go. Now, if you haven't prepared well enough, that's a very different thing. Now, I would experience performance anxiety if I have not prepared my piece to the extent that I can let go. Now, you can only let go once you have internalized that piece of music to the extent that you don't really need to think or worry about what's coming up. Now, excuse me. Now, if you do find that the thoughts are creeping in, this bit's difficult, I'm not going to be able to play it very well, what am I going to do? Breathe like that. Because what that does is, again, I've talked about this before in my other videos, it's a brilliant way just to wipe the slate clean. And you'll find that you give your brain the amount of oxygen that it needs to actually get through that part, because you are doing a very, very high performance activity when you're playing an instrument, particularly one as difficult as the violin, and your brain needs a lot more oxygen. Now, if you stop breathing, which people do when they're stressed, then the brain's not going to be able to do what it needs to do, the body's not going to be able to do what it needs to do, and naturally it might fall apart, probably will. But if you can give it that short, sharp like that, then you'll probably find you can get through the difficult passage that is making you anxious. Now, that is the secret to overcoming performance anxiety. Now, this will not be the first video that I do on this topic, because I think there is a lot of content here. There's really a lot of content. One topic that I'll be touching on later is this culture of criticism. Are we kind to ourselves? Are we kind to other people? Have other people been kind to us? In sort of old school classical music world, it was the norm, or it may still be the norm. You know, I'm not really involved in that world in particular, and haven't been for a long time. It is very normal for people to be hypercritical, and normally that happens when people are envious or jealous of you. People want to look for you to fall down, and that's when people can be quite harsh if you make a tiny mistake. If you're sensitive like me, you might take that to heart and maybe never recover from it. So I'll give you an example. When I was around 18 years old, maybe a bit younger, 16, 17, I went to an open day at Cheetham School of Music in Manchester. Now, we were all entitled to a 5-minute violin lesson from a maestro, and that was what the open day was all about. We could go take part in activities, and everybody got their 5-minute violin lesson. So I prepared a piece of music. It was Vivaldi's Summer, Spring, that was it, Spring. And I was so nervous that my body was shaking like this. And at the end he said, okay, yeah, you'll be a good amateur, but you'll never be a professional. And so I went home. I decided not to apply to go to music college, and instead I applied to a different university and studied a course that was completely irrelevant. to what I was interested in, because I just thought, well, I thought I was going to do music, and now I'm not able to do music because that guy thinks I'm not good enough. And I listened to him. And, you know, if anybody ever says anything like this to you, remember, maybe that person's having a bad day. Maybe they're not a very nice person. But the truth is, a good teacher will never tell you what you can and can't do, because everybody has the capacity to do anything if you do the work. Now, I have students who work tirelessly, practicing for a couple of hours a day, every day, and I've seen things happen that I wasn't necessarily expecting at the beginning, and I had to say to myself, hey, you know, maybe you actually were wrong about this person. You thought they didn't have good intonation, perhaps, and it turns out that they are developing a really, really good intonation. Everything can be learnt, everything can be practiced. Of course, there has to be natural talent, but talent is not enough. Talent can take you so far, but you can also develop a talent, and that's not something that will necessarily be shared with you by somebody who wants to put you down. So, in summary, performance anxiety can be overcome in the moment through breath work. That kind of breath. Now, that's how you get through a difficult passage. Obviously, you have to prepare, but I'm talking about the incident where you have prepared, but it's the anxiety that comes in and then it says you're not good enough. That's how it's like a bullet. Shoot it with the bullet. Please don't. I do not condone shooting anything, but yeah, you get the idea. And second of all, don't listen to critics. If you care what other people think, it will stop you from getting anywhere. And the key to doing anything creative is to decide from the outset that you are not going to care what anybody thinks. And that's when you can perform miracles. And you will even surprise yourself. So I'm going to wrap that up there. Anybody have any questions or anything about performance anxiety? I probably will do some more videos on this topic because I think it's a really, really big deal. You know, I know some musicians who I would consider them to be perfect, and even they experience it. You know, we're all human. At the end of the day, it's not about being perfect. It's about doing what you love, and it's about enjoying it. And we're not trying to impress anybody else. We're doing it because our heart is drawn to playing this beautiful instrument, or whatever instrument, or maybe you do something else. Maybe you found this video and you're an actor or a singer, but I play the violin. Here's my beautiful violin. And whilst I tried to deny my violin by quitting it, it found me again. And I've realised that you just have to follow your heart and not listen to anybody else and keep breathing. All right, take care, everybody. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. I am intending to release a lot of videos on the topic of healing the physical challenges and mental and emotional that stop people from performing the violin to the best of their ability and sometimes can make them quit. So please, if you're one of those people, don't stop right now. Subscribe to my channel, and I'm going to share as much as I can with you in the coming time period. Yeah, I'm waffling now, so I'm going to let you go. Take care. Thank you very much.